This week on New Media Tech, it's going to be a quick one. Today was WWDC, and we've been working in the studio all week, so we're going to talk a little bit about that. And this week we're going to continue down the audio path with upgrading your audio software right after this. Hello and welcome to episode number 13 of New Media Tech. And this week we don't really have lots of things to cover because today, which is Monday, the 10th of June, was WWDC, and we spent quite a bit of our time today actually watching WWDC and talking about it. So I'm going to mention a couple of things about that. This isn't really the show for Apple or Macintosh or iPhone, sort of things like that. But there's a couple of things in there that maybe I'll mention that are kind of interesting that could affect the new media stuff. So last week we took a look at upgrading to a soundboard, and I mentioned I was going to start doing some videos on how to set them up, and I have started that this week. I haven't finished, in fact I haven't even started editing them yet, but I did record in the basics of setting up a soundboard, and I have a few drawings I want to add into the finalized video that I have to do yet, but probably in the next week or so I'll have a video out on how to connect a simple soundboard. I'm going to use the same one that I had here because they're all basically the same, and I'm going to show you how you connect it up and get it into your computer. Now I'm actually going to use these little dongles that I showed you before and all that kind of stuff. So thinking about putting together some kind of hardware package where you get the cables and everything that you need to do it right. That will make it a lot easier because going into a small interface like that, there are some little cabling issues and things you can do to help keep the noise down, and I want to make sure that you have good stuff. So I'm working on putting that together as well. So that's something from last week, and I'm probably going to do a small video set on configuring and using the soundboard in addition to plugging it in. I have not done that yet, so that's something I'll try to do in the next week or so as well. So that's all in progress as time permits. Now, there's one thing on the news item list this week, and we mentioned this last week, and it's very important. We're going to keep talking about this for the next 5 weeks now, because this is the second week, and that is we are moving our YouTube channels into one channel using playlists inside of the YouTube channel. Up to this point, all of our shows have had their own YouTube channel, which when initially setting things up, it made sense to us because somebody who's watching this show might not be interested in the Arduino stuff. We didn't want to, force that down somebody or get notifications all the time because of our other shows. So we weren't aware of the playlist feature inside of YouTube. We hadn't used YouTube a lot. So we figured the simplest thing to do was create a separate channel. Well, ends up being that actually wasn't the best way for us to do it because we want to start doing some YouTube Live, and which channel do you use? If you do it on one, does it make sense to have the other ones on there? So it's one of those things where we're moving it all into one. So I mentioned this last week. The YouTube channel for Let's Make It, which is youtube.com/tzlet'smakeit, /TZ/new media, is going to remain, but we're going to only put videos on it for the next 5 weeks. After that, we're not going to take the channel down. We're going to leave it up because it has good following in it. But the new shows in 5 weeks, in fact, episode 17 will be the first one that will only be published on the new channel. The new channel is easy to remember. It is youtube.com/techzentv, and all our videos will be in there, and you'll see that we've already set playlist already. And as we're putting them onto our website, we are already using the new YouTube channel already. In fact, we just put out a new show for the first time last week, and it is only going up on this new channel. It won't have its own separate channel on YouTube, and we have 2 more coming out to release this week, and they will also only be on this new channel. So if you're watching this on the YouTube channel that is TZ New Media, then you need to go to youtube.com/techzentv and subscribe over there. Now, the other thing is we can't start doing YouTube Live until we get 1,000 subscribers. And we, on each of our other channels, we were well past 1,000 subscribers, so we could have taken any of them and activated it. But on the new one, we are asking everybody to go back over there and resubscribe so we can get it over 1,000. And it seems like it's going a little bit slower than what I've liked. I know we mentioned last week about this on all of our shows about things moving over, and we just need everybody to go out and do that. So that's something I'm going to keep reminding you about. I'll remind you before you are done watching this video one more time at the end, just to make sure you go and you do that. So that's affecting all of our shows are doing that. So there is one other news item, and didn't want to mention this last week because I didn't want to make it too premature, but it's definitely happening. We are actually creating another broadcast network for the internet. And that doesn't mean TechZen TV is going away. The issue is we have some shows we want to do that aren't technology related, and it just seems weird. In fact, we did one this past winter on American Idol, and it just felt weird having American Idol on the TechZen TV network. So that's the only reason we're creating a separate network. And they will also have TechZen TV shows out there, but we have a number of other shows that we want to do that are not technology related. And that's just only way that makes sense to us to do that is to create another network. And we're going to be actually looking for additional shows to bring on that maybe already exist, and we're looking for some kind of expansion. And we're in that process now. We're actually talking with a couple people about that already, and they will be coming onto that network as well. And they're not technology related shows. And I don't mind bringing on other people's technology shows on that network either. It's for anything, really. And we're not going to close it down to just our stuff. And I mean, we'll be the broadcaster and the producer and stuff like that, but if somebody has another tech show that they maybe are right now only doing in audio form and like to move into video but don't have the ability to spend the money for it to get all the equipment that you need, and you just want somebody to do it for you, that's kind of what these other shows are right now. They want to take it to the next level, but they just don't have the funds or necessarily the knowledge or the know-how to be able to do it, so we come in and help them out with that. So that's coming up. That's Alexa TV. And probably in the next 2 to 3 weeks, we'll be mentioning it again when we get the website completed. That's all in process now. And but it's definitely moving forward, and we do have some shows that are going to be going on there. That's the plan. All right, so that's pretty much it for the news items. Now, I mentioned about WWDC. That was today. And it was kind of interesting. This is the first major overhaul of iOS 7, but that's not really the thing that I think would affect some new media. They now have their own radio. They call it iTunes Radio. And I'm not quite sure how it's all going to work, if it's just going to be like a Pandora or if it's going to be more like a tune-in radio where you can have your own station and we could be broadcasting our audio, kind of like Stitcher. So there's still a lot to be up. What they showed basically looked a lot like Pandora and how Pandora works, which in that case may not really fit in, but they could be going to be mixing that up a little bit. So I'm really excited to look at that and see where they're trying to go with that and where it can go in the future and where it can affect, new media broadcasting stuff. If you're a new media, like a music person, then yeah, you probably will affect you some. So that's just an interesting thing that happened today. I mean, it wasn't very interesting stuff with iOS and even their new naming. So they ran out of big cats. So now that's what they're going to either do. What they had today was some surfing location that's popular in California. And but it was kind of interesting as well as the funny naming convention for OS X, which is the new one's coming out. Some neat things in there too, but no big wow things for me. Although I use a Mac, I'm looking forward to that as well. All right, so you may notice, at least to me, I seem very dark on the monitor in front of me. And this last week, since our last show, I mentioned we we're going to be doing some changing over of things. Not everything worked as planned, but a lot of it's been done. Our lighting's been changed. We're still working on the lighting a little bit. In front of me, I have a whole different set of stuff, or more stuff than I had before to help me determine what's going on. And where we came down to last week was mentioned about we're going to put Wirecast after our Atem switch to do the lower third graphics and like a DDR and things like that. And I showed you the controls, which works fine with the one exception. I can't get the video out of the machine to get into the recorder, which goes to the stream and et cetera, et cetera. Ends up being, and I think I mentioned this last week, I have a Blackmagic mini recorder which brings video into Wirecast beautifully, and I got a USB 3 shuttle, which by theory should be beautiful as well. However, Blackmagic does not have USB 3 drivers for their shuttle. So I bought a brick, or I have a brick basically, and I have no way of getting video out. Somebody told me I should use Wirecast, just use the HDMI out of the Mini, but that doesn't work. I have a USB 3 display adapter, but Wirecast won't run on that monitor. It needs to run on the machine itself, so that limits me from that. So I'm still trying to figure out how to get good video out of that machine, and hopefully I'll figure something out by next week. But I will say that if I'm running it on the external monitor, everything works fine. It just doesn't look that great, which is what I'm trying to fix. So hopefully next week that problem is solved, or I hope so. But you'll see some other things going on in the studio that hopefully I'll get corrected in time. Hopefully by next week. Just a couple little things that need to be done in here. Moving some things around. The cameras probably need to be re-white balanced now. I think that's probably why it's so dark, because we did some changing the lights, and we're still not done changing lights, so it wouldn't do much good probably for this week anyways to go ahead and white balance it and have to do it again next week. Not that it takes that long to do. It's just one of those things I didn't get a chance to do that. But I noticed the wall behind me is very dark, and that should be changed next week, hopefully as well. Moving a couple of the lights. The light we've been using for what some call it the hair or the shoulder light just wasn't working well. It was actually too far forward where it's at, so we're going to some lights that are back here instead. So just a little bit of changes going on in the studio still this week. All right, so last week we talked about soundboards, and I had a hard time deciding in the order of things what you should do is to take your stuff to the next level. What would you do first? And based on last week and this week. This week we're going to talk about upgrading your software. Now, there's a ton of free software out there at editing, and the most popular is Audacity. That's who I hear from so many people that are using Audacity to do their stuff. Well, okay, yeah, it's not bad, but it's not great either. So I feel sound is very important, even in a video podcast, because like I will download video podcasts and I will watch them kind of off to the side, but I'm more listening to them. So I always think audio is the most important part of a podcast or any kind of broadcast. So the thing about Audacity is its encoder, I can't remember the name of the encoder, but it's really edgy. It doesn't give you a nice smooth feel. So if I had to recommend the next step, and this came down to the soundboard or software, it was one of those things, and you got to kind of decide what's more important to you, to get more channels in to your system because you need them for a guest or whatever, or do you not need necessarily more channels, but you could take the jump to better sound in the end. So what I personally recommend for this is Adobe Audition. It runs on both Windows and a PC and a Mac. So it doesn't matter what platform you're on. They work basically the same. I mean, it's the same way with like Photoshop. They work pretty much the same on both platforms. It's very easy to learn. I do recommend go to somewhere like lynda.com and watch the videos on it, just so you get a little bit of comfort with using it. But there's some nice filters in it, and there's one that most people just use by default, and it's under compression, and it's called the Broadcast, and it's actually a multi-band compressor, and it really gives you that nice solid radio sound. Personally, I think it works better with men than women, but women still sound better, I think, than not using it. But there's a ton of other things. I know people that use GarageBand, and built into GarageBand is the ability to do podcast. So it would make kind of sense that you would look at GarageBand as a possibility. I can't say I've ever even tried using GarageBand for doing a podcast. I have played with GarageBand. I've done some basic things in GarageBand, but typically if I'm doing anything in audio in a Mac, I'm using something a little bit more powerful than GarageBand. So I do use Adobe Audition on the Mac. Most of the time when I do my editing for the videos and everything, I do that all in Premiere, and it has a decent audio system in it as well, so I never really have to go back to Audition to do that. So you got to decide what's more important to you. I mean, definitely sound is important. I think that is the most important part, like I said, of the podcast. And you have to decide at what point do you either need the soundboard or you need to upgrade to better software. Now, I didn't check the price of Audition. before I came in here, and I know they do also have this cloud thing where you can get certain software as included for, it's like $29 a month, and it includes more than Audition. It includes other things as well, but that could be an option as well, and it doesn't cost you like the big lump sum at one time. Although I don't think Audition is very expensive. I think it's like in the $250 range. Last time I had checked, $250, $300, something similar to that, and maybe less than that by now. So there are other audio programs on the PC. I can't necessarily recommend one because I don't use a PC enough anymore to be able to recommend one. But I'm just trying to say at this point, if you have the ability, get off of Audacity. Now, I'm not a big Audacity user. I do use it for very simple things sometimes, and that is definitely what I recommend to get started for free. It's probably the best one out there that's free as far as sound editing software. And somebody did tell me that there is a way you can change the encoder, although I'm not familiar with how to do it. You just want to change the default encoder. It's just very edgy sounding. It doesn't sound very clean. It's kind of rough. So that is the main thing that I wanted to talk about this week. This was as we're going through this, we're talking about right now, we're focusing on audio. So where do you go for the next step for audio? And the next step going forward for audio is to that's what we talked about, a soundboard, and this week we're talking about software, and those two are how you get to the next level. Now we're going to go forward now to talking about other things other than just improving your audio. In fact, we're going to start moving into some video as well, but next week I think we're going to talk about where do you distribute your podcast at. And there's a ton of different sites, especially if you're audio only, that will do podcast distribution. So I'm going to talk a little bit how I do it. I do it probably a lot different than most people, because most people use some kind of service or something that's pretty common. I do a lot of it in-house using some other services, but I feed those services and do a lot of it in-house. And we'll talk about that because there's a bunch of different ways. And I'm going to focus on audio distribution next week, but we will talk about video distribution in the near future as well. That's all coming up down the line. And I also have a couple of product reviews coming up. And I was hoping this week, I'd kind of reserved this week to go through the whole rework of the video insertion and putting ads and everything in, and it just didn't happen. I mean, I've been working on it, and I can't get it to work the way that I wanted to. Actually, I can get it to work, but the video is too soft, and I won't degrade the quality of the video. So I'm trying to find a better solution to get the video out. But that was what I was going to spend at least 30 minutes on this week in explaining how I did all this stuff for the switching. So, like I said, this week's going to be a little bit shorter than our average week just because we didn't have a lot of time this week because working in the studio, and then WWDC was today. So, not really any good excuses, but we're just running a little bit behind with things this week. So, I wanted to know where you would like. First of all, I'd like to know if we're heading the right direction, going step by step every week like this, and if you have anything in particular. Now, I want to start bringing in some more product type stuff to go through, and I'm going to jump into video, which is a lot more stuff to talk about with video. There's a ton more stuff, but if I go through my list here that's coming up, let's see. I have some different models for making money with your shows. Just many different ways you can make money. Like we're starting to make products. Like if you ever watch our Let's Make It show, we have these Arduino shields we're making now. I'm going to start selling. In fact, in tonight's show at 9:00 Eastern, we actually are going to show these two put together and working. Just because we will make sure everybody thinks we're not crazy. So we're going to talk about hardware versus software switching. And this is more video coming up. That's kind of what I was going to talk about this week. Well, not necessarily to compare it, but to show you what combining the two together can do. Talk about some wireless video solutions. I want to bring in some hardware and show you that. I'm still working on the total workflow document as for audio and in the decision tree. That's coming along quite well, actually. And it's actually bigger than I can show you on the screen. I have to keep moving around, so I got to figure out how I'm going to present that to people, but I got that making down pretty well. We're going to talk a little bit about live streaming coming up, and I'm pretty much going to focus on video because that's pretty much what I know as far as live streaming goes. I am going to research some audio-only solutions, but I don't do any of the audio streaming, so only the video. It's one of those things where I need to get some background before I can even really talk about it. How to track the performance of your show, downloads, views, things like that, and some tools that we use. Plus, involving, like, I put things on YouTube, and I can include that in my view count because it is, as far as I'm concerned, a view. If YouTube says they viewed it, they viewed it. I don't know what the rules are around YouTube. If they got to watch it 25% or half or whatever it is. As I mentioned earlier, how and where to distribute your media. That's next week. We're going to talk about that. Some remote guest solutions. I use Skype, and actually I've been using a couple other things depending on the guest that recently. Skype has always been my go-to, but like last week, if you watched Let's Make It, Skype just wasn't cooperating very well with us. His audio broke up a little bit, but his video was frozen for the longest time. And it did come back and fix itself. But there are other things. I've seen people starting to use Hangouts now. Now, Hangouts don't look as good. That's just one reason that I tend to veer away from them, or that's the main reason. Plus, it also has all this junk around it, so you get to scale it up. And I don't really have an easy way to scale it up with the current system. Now, when I go to the Wirecast after the Atem, there is a possibility I could do something with that, and I have to play with that some. Google Talk. We used Google Talk once, and it surprisingly was really good. I haven't tried the new Hangout stuff yet. I need to do that. So that'd be something we can look at coming up in the future as well. Let's see. Room acoustics. I think I've talked a little bit about this room. This room is full of foam the whole way around. The wall behind me, which actually we're going to talk about sets too. It's another whole thing. The wall and the whole set in this room can be taken out in 10 minutes. So if I wanted to convert this back to a strictly 100% audio studio, it'd take me like 10 minutes to take everything apart and take it out of this room. Now, most of the things we do, like when we record documentaries or whatever we're doing, we're facing the foam, so the wall behind doesn't matter. But if I'd bring some kind of band or something like that in, or a guitarist, I'd take that stuff out just to keep the echo down from the acoustics and let the foam do more of its work. I wouldn't take the trussing and everything down. I just take out the flat thing on the back wall. Lighting, which that's going to be a good one to talk about because I've actually learned a lot in the last couple months. I grew up learning 3-point lighting, your key, your fill, and your hair or your shoulder light behind. But that really isn't the way people do it anymore in video. And I've been relearned. And that's part of what we're doing right now. And doing the studio lighting is we're moving things around with a little bit better purpose than what we had before. I still have 3-point lighting in the studio, and that's going to stay because we do some photography in here as well. 3-point lighting is considered artistic, so that's still what most people are using to do camera type work, just not for video. We're going to talk about some free tools, and actually I'm getting very good at these to help keep you organized. Things like Google Docs. I'm going to explain how we do it here and how a lot of other broadcasters are doing it now using Google Docs. It's a great way, especially if you have a guest, to keep everything inexpensive, first of all, but very organized, and it's great for collaboration. We're going to talk about how to become interactive. This is one show that I can't say is very interactive yet because right now it's only me and 2 people in the chat room, and that's not to me very interactive, and nobody's really talking. So, but some of our other shows, like Let's Make It, has a regular audience that shows up. Now, one of the things I'm going to say that I've learned from experience is don't move the show. When we originally started, we were doing Let's Make It on Wednesday night. We had another show which has 2 regular guests on it, or 2 co-hosts, and their only night was Wednesday night, so we moved that show to Tuesday, lost some audience, and now we've moved it to Monday. We've lost a little bit more audience, so everybody catches up. So that's a learning experience. I wish we had a little bit more interactive, but we're getting there, and every week it gets a little bit better, and I kind of starting to see it get better and better and better. Plus, our interactive with our audience via email is really doing well, especially on 2 of our shows. It's really getting a lot of email, so that's very good. It's interactive, just not real live interactive. But we're going to talk about that a little bit. How to promote your show, we're going to talk about that. Some social automation, which we do social automation, and we'll talk about that. Social setup for your shows. I'm going to tell you how. Well, it's how we're doing it right now, but it's how we're moving away from. And it kind of goes along the same thing with YouTube, where we had a Twitter account for every show. That probably isn't the best thing for us to do. We had a Facebook fan page for every show. Again, probably not the best thing for us to do. It made sense when we did it because they're so different. But the more we do it, the more we think that was probably the wrong decision to make. So we're going to talk about some of that, and you can make the decision what you think about it when we talk about it, because it doesn't mean that what you were doing it, we're moving to is correct. Maybe the way we were doing it was better for you, and that's perfectly fine. So, let's see. Down my list here. Well, I said about income, how you different models. Also, I talk about the passive and not so passive income streams. Do you stream live or do you do downloads only? When do you decide to make the change to go streaming live versus download only? I know people that's all they do is downloads, and their shows are doing great. It's one of those things where you have to decide when is the time for you to go live. I think live is where it's going to be in the future, especially as we get more and more cord cutters where people don't have cable or are watching things off the internet. I think that's going to grow. That doesn't mean that the downloads are not going to grow. I think they're going to grow as well. In fact, they may even go faster than the live, but I think as live's going to start to catch on here very soon. It already starts catching on right now. All right, so that's the upcoming shows. And let's see, anything else? Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about these other apps too, like Google TV, Apple TV, which may be, from what I'm hearing, soon an Apple TV developer, which maybe that's just a possibility. And we're going to talk about like Roku apps as well. We have a Roku app. We're going to talk about what it's done for us, because it's definitely made a huge difference for us as far as viewership goes. We're over 12,000 downloads of the Roku app as of today, and it's still going, and it's craziness. It's amazing how fast that catching on. And I will say that if you look at our stats, our Roku views are way up there towards the top of what's doing the views. That's why we're working on an iOS and an Android and a Google TV. That should all be out here really soon. So that's all coming up as well. And we'll talk about maybe some ways you can get that created for you. And that's pretty much all I have coming up in the near future. Like I said, this week's going to be a very quick week, and next week we'll have a lot more stuff prepared. In fact, we already have stuff prepared for next week. This week's was pretty much the software and to go over what we were doing with software switching, which didn't happen. So if that does happen for next week's show may be quite a bit longer, actually. All right, again, we want to remind you, our YouTube channel's moving. And it's moving to youtube.com/TechZenTV for the next 5 episodes. They'll be posted both places. If you look at our website, though, it's only posted on the new one. And I mentioned before, we do broadcast live every Monday night at 8 p.m. And I have hopefully some guests coming up here soon as well. But we broadcast live every Monday at 8 p.m. You can come watch us live at tech-zen.tv/live, or just go to techzen.tv and you can click on the live link at the top. Plus, we have a live chat room you can get in and interact with us. I'm in the chat room all the time. Like I said, tonight there's only 2 other people in there with me, and they just aren't very talkative. They're just hanging out in there. So definitely would like to have you come, and you can always send us an email at newmediatech@tech-zen.tv to send us an email. We definitely like hearing from our viewers and our listeners. We definitely appreciate all the feedback that you want to give us. And if you have something you want to show us or ask a question, you can do that. If you want to send us a video, maybe show us your studio setup, that would be kind of cool too. Just send us a link to the YouTube video wherever you post it, and it'll probably show up on the air eventually. And if you have questions, you can also send it that way, or comments, whatever. It works just as well through video or via email. Either way works great. All right, that is it for this week. We will see you next Monday at 8 p.m. Come in and chat with us. See ya.